Hello, good morning. Welcome back to our online lesson. Today we are going to talk about the Umbra and Penumbra. So what is Umbra and what is Penumbra? But first, we are going back to our lessons last week. It's just a review about light. What is light? The brightness that comes from the sun and fire and other things that gives out light is what we call light. There are two sources of light. It's either they are a natural light or a natural sources of light, or they are man-made sources of light. Now look at the two picture which has labeled with the light source that compose A, B, C, D, and E. Those are examples of man-made sources of light. Below, the light source includes the fireflies and the glowworms. Those are examples of natural light source. Not source of light, reflect lights only. The moon and a mirror is an example of not source of light. They are only reflecting light that comes from the sources of lights. Now, how does the moon reflect lights? Moon reflect lights that comes from the sun. We can see the bright lights of the moon during at night is because it is the sun is below the earth, and it is getting some lights from the sun in order for it to reflect lights to the earth. Now there are three types of materials. The transparent materials let light pass through them in a straight lines. Examples of the transparent materials, we have glass, a baggy, and a crystals. Translucent is for number 2 types. Materials that let some lights through. An example of these translucent materials are the tissue paper, frosted glass, wax paper, and a white paper. Opaque materials do not let any light pass through them. An example of that are woods, cardboard, and a black paper. So what are the characteristics of lights? Number 1, light travels in a straight line. Number 2, light can be reflected, and number 3, light can be bent or can be refracted. Light travels in a straight line, so if it is blocked, there must be a shadow form. That is how a shadow forms. There are the two types of shadows. We have the umbra and we have the penumbra. The object must be opaque or translucent to create a shadow. A transparent object will not make any shadow as light will pass straight through it. Shadows of the umbra and the penumbra. The umbra is a central, darker part of a shadow where light is totally blocked. The penumbra is a lighter part of a shadow where light is partially blocked. Can you see the diagram? Look at the diagram and identify the umbra and penumbra. The darker color is the umbra and the lighter one is the penumbra. Now let us watch this video in order for you to learn more about the umbra and penumbra.
Formation of shadows. When there is some obstruction in the path of light, we see a shadow. Light is always needed for a shadow to form. Shadows can never form in total darkness. Let us see how a shadow is formed. If an opaque body is placed in the path of light, the light cannot pass through it. The rays are stopped from going to the other side of the opaque body, and the space behind the body does not receive any light from the source. The space behind the opaque object where the light cannot reach is called a shadow. Thus, shadows are formed when light is stopped by objects. An opaque object casts a dark shadow. A translucent object casts a faint shadow. And a transparent object casts no shadow at all. Shadows are formed because light travels in straight lines. If the source of light is very small, that is, a point source, then a sharp, well-defined image is formed on the screen. When the source of light is wide, two shadows can be seen. One shadow is completely dark, called the Umbra, in the center, and the other is a partial shadow, called Penumbra, surrounding it. Notice that the Umbra does not receive any light from any portion of the source, whereas the Penumbra receives light from a part of the source. Shadowless lighting. The fact that light travels in straight lines and produces shadow is used to produce shadowless lighting. Here, the source of light is much larger than the object. For example, when a fluorescent lamp or a row of bulb is shown on an object, the umbra formed is very close to the object. Thus, by reducing the umbra region of the shadow, a shadowless effect is created.
This is the first in a series of videos focusing on eclipses. Let us first consider the shadow an object casts due to a point source. Because the light comes from only one point, the shadow's edges are sharply defined. We call the shadow the umbra. If an observer's eye is inside the umbra, they can't see the source at all. Light from distant stars are good point sources, but most light sources, including the sun, are not point sources. They are extended sources. If you look at the shadow cast by the ball due to the lamp, which is an extended source, you will see two different parts of the shadow: the darker central region and the lighter shadow around it. The darker shadow, the umbra, is a cone of finite length. The lighter part of the shadow is called the penumbra, which is a cone of infinite length. If an observer's eye is inside the penumbra, they can see part of the source, but not all of it. To exaggerate this effect, we will now use a larger extended source. When the ball is close to the screen, we can once again see the umbra surrounded by the penumbra. When the ball is moved farther from the screen, the umbra no longer reaches the screen, and we see the antumbra surrounded by the penumbra. We can see how the earlier umbra is not as dark as the present antumbra when comparing the two. The umbra is the region that does not receive any light due to the position of the eclipsing object, while the penumbra and antumbra are partially illuminated. Let's check our understanding with a peer instruction question. If I take a slice of the shadow cast by Earth due to the sun, its cross-sectional area may look like which of the following? Classroom students should follow normal procedures or instructor guidelines. Viewers not in the classroom should record your vote and explain your reasoning on a piece of paper. Please pause this video and answer the question.
So that's all for today, guys. And I will give you worksheets for next class will be on Wednesday. We are going to use again this PowerPoint in order for you to answer the worksheets. Okay? So that's all for today, guys. Have a good day, stay safe and healthy. Bye bye.